Today on the podcast, we are going to speak about why India is the spiritual heart of the world. But before we get into that, not to ignore the elephant in the room, we want to send our best wishes to everyone in India, actually all around the world in this current situation, which is really annoying for everyone, and there's a lot of suffering going on around the world, and so we want to really send our best wishes, especially to India, who have been doing it tough recently, and know that we're thinking about you, and Jai Hind, Jai Hind, Bharat Mata Ki Jai. So, to get into this, a lot of people will think, why is India the spiritual heart of the world? But we have to think about all of the traditions that have come from India, right? A lot of people just think about Hinduism. But India itself, let's talk about the whole subcontinent region there, like including Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, even Nepal. It's been like a factory of spiritual traditions. Like it's just naturally growing, right? Like they weren't obviously Christianity and Islam have come to India, but we have, obviously Sanatana Dharma, what people commonly know as Hinduism. We have Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism. We have like these Sankhya, right? We have Sankhya. And so you have like these wonderful traditions that have grown there, right? And the irony is they've influenced the world in a very positive way, right?
I think a lot of people don't know Buddhism is actually from India, right? Most people think maybe from China or Japan or something like that. But again, what Alan Watts would say, the stripped of version of Hinduism, the Buddhism is. So
Buddhism is for export.
Yes, export.
It's Hinduism for export. Yeah.
Because to be a Hindu, you need to be born as Hindu. So so Buddhism is like a different version of Hinduism for other people.
Some Hindus these days would probably disagree a little bit with that, like you have to be born Hindu, because a lot of foreigners
that is true.
Say they're Hindus now and follow the Dharma, and but there are a lot of those, like it is in some sense you could say it's an ethnic tradition, but like Buddhism and Jainism aren't. Well, a lot of people would say that, like for example, Mahavira with Jainism, a lot of people think that Mahavira and Gautama the Buddha were like reformers, right? Like so they reformed somewhat the Hindu tradition, and it's not. And I'm not saying that Mahavira was the original. He was like the 24th Tirthankara. So, in Jainist thought, he's thought of as the 24th Tirthankara, and there was 24 before him, and they can go back way back with this tradition. But Mahavira was kind of like the one who formalized Jainism, and it was actually in the same sort of time period, like between 700 and 500 BCE, when Mahavira and Gautama the Buddha existed, there was different religions, or shouldn't say religions, spiritual paths were created, right? Like you said, like they're stripped of all of the the Hindu framework, and it's kind of like made for export, especially with Buddhism. But that's a whole different thing. But the thing is, what's really wonderful about that is especially when you look at the history of Buddhism, Buddhism originating in Bihar, and actually it's funny because Mahavira is in Bihar too. So, but then a lot of people say, well, how did Buddhism get out from India? And got out through traders. It got out through merchants. You know what I mean? Just getting around, not preaching the word, but they were Buddhists, and they were maybe traveling to Southeast Asia with goods and stuff like this, and then the word got out slowly. And obviously, Ashoka was a big factor in Buddhism in India. But as we know, what happened with Buddhism when the Muslims came, like it pretty much got destroyed in India. But in saying all of that, like these are the gifts that India keep giving.
That like a longest enduring culture of the world, and I sometimes think that why that is, why the Indian tradition is still living on very hard. Is that a tradition itself, or is it like a character of the people, something. But I think again, like since the dawn of the Indus civilization, that we know that yogis found in their sculpture and things like that. So that tradition, that the spiritual ritual and practice was always existing, I think, and somewhat that kind of tradition and rituals shaped the character of the Indus people.
Yeah, of course.
I think.
Yeah.
And that is to again, like as you mentioned, with how Buddhists got over to all over the world, and they finding some amazing big Buddha statues in Afghanistan and things like that. So all that region, those people who got heavily, obviously, influenced by that tradition, and that somewhat shaped the character of people, I think.
Yeah. Well, that Vedic culture, right? The Vedic religion coming out of that Indus Valley, the Mohenjo-daro, Harappa area is what we would call Sanatana Dharma these days, because of its evolution, through history, especially that period of time when, the Mahabharata was created after, the Vedas and so forth and so on. That you have this like really rich culture and history built on the rishis, built on the great seers, that, and one thing I think the power behind that is that it's a tradition based on an understanding of who we truly are, and so it's I think that's really such a heavy weight that's hard to eradicate, right? Like, because if we look at India, it's been through centuries of oppression, right? So we had the Muslim invaders, then we had the British invaders, and then out of all of that, India's still rolling.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like the Dharma is still alive. The Dharma didn't die. It's still there. And actually, like, it's going through sort of a renaissance in India at the moment, where a lot of people are trying to reestablish the Hindu Dharma as Sanatana Dharma, as the pinnacle of what it should be actually in India. It went through. It was on the ropes. It had a standing 8 count when it went through the Muslim invaders and the British invaders. But it's it got itself together. It got a few punches, but it's alive and doing well. And I think like what you and I feel from India and what everyone else does when they go there is that thousands and thousands of years, that culture is gone through everything, but still lives within the bones of the people. And it's still, I mean, the British partitioned the land, right? The Great Land. Bharat was partitioned into Bangladesh, Pakistan,
different countries.
You know what I mean, and it should have never happened. And that was very clumsily done by the British, especially when we look at Kashmir. But it's gone through all of that, and it's still rolling. You know what I mean, and actually leading the way in the world spiritually. Like we were talking yesterday before the podcast about the influence of yoga and meditation on the world. That's a gift, right? A gift from India that, you need to pay credit where credit is due. You know what I mean? Like that's India has given that to the world.
Actually, what you mentioned earlier, like biggest power behind the tradition is the tradition which based on exploring human life and death, I think.
Yes.
That is forever in a day humanity's questions.
Yep.
That's throughout like a Mesopotamian civilization, Egyptian. Yep. It's in their tradition as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So as in the civilization, so that in the civilization tradition had that keen interest in exploration of studying what human life is about and why we are here. All these very basic and so fundamental questions to ask if you were born as a human being, right? We have all this ability to think and making things and creating things. Then our intelligent level gets to ask questions like why why do we live?
Yeah, exactly.
Why? What's the purpose of all this? And people disappear, people die, right? And where do they go? And all this sort of curiosity that people had. And I think that is why they came up with quite sophisticated science of mind and human life. And that's I think the biggest power why it's still living on. That is forever. That question is never going to go away, right?
No.
The upcoming generation now, they will grow up and they become at an age when like ask that sort of inquiries, right? And so it's everyone's question.
Yeah, forever.
Yeah.
The who am I, the what am I question is going to be around till this universe dissolves.
It's a matter of when.
It's a matter of when, you know what I mean? Like, and the differences between the Dharmic paths and, say, Abrahamic religions is the Abrahamic religions try to answer sort of like greater questions with the idea of a created God. You know what I mean? Where the Dharmic paths don't really, like, especially like if you look at Jainism, Sankhya, yoga, Buddhism, they don't have like there's not even like the, in some sense, the idea of Brahman, like, because you have Purusha, which is kind of just pure consciousness. But they don't have a created God. And Sanatana Dharma doesn't have a created God, unless you want to say Brahma in the pantheon of gods. But that's, again, more complicated subject. That's a representation of one underlying Brahman. But the difference to the Abrahamic faiths is that the focus was on what's the nature of consciousness. Not if there's a God, not who created this. You know, it's very similar to Taoism. Like, Taoism don't sit around and go, who created this? Because of the understanding that the universe has grown. It's like its own living organism. So, and you're just a small fraction of this one living organism. And so the idea then became, you know, why do we suffer? What's the nature? Like, shouldn't we experience joy instead of suffering? Like, why do we suffer? And then, well, the deeper inquiry goes, well, you suffer because you identify with this jiva, this persona. That's actually an accumulation of your experiences, your upbringing, your conditioning. But when you investigate that, it doesn't really exist. You know, it's like building a sandcastle. You build a sandcastle, the wind and the ocean will blow it over eventually. But, you know, you can either suffer that sandcastle being knocked down and continually trying to keep it up, or you can just let it go, you know. And this is why the Dharmic paths, all of them actually, are moksha traditions. They are traditions based on liberation, not based on, you know, got to be one with God and this and that. It's about freeing yourself from suffering and freeing yourself from the persona, which then, you know, you have a resonance with the deeper aspect of who you truly are, which is one with everything else. And this is what liberation is, right? Moksha, nirvana. So this is what, and again, this is another gift that India gives. And you have all of these great ideas, right? Like from this moksha tradition, where you have like samsara, karma, ahimsa, jiva, as I said, satya, truth, asteya, non-stealing, vairagya, renunciation. It's a renunciation tradition, right? Like aparigraha, so non-possessiveness. So like the idea of not having too much and living in moderation, brahmacharya, you know, chastity and like sexual restraint and all of these things. Yeah. It's such a, like you said, it's like a science, you know what I mean? But it's a science of being. Yeah. It's the science of being a human, what it means to be a human, and what it means to experience moksha. And or better, I should say, is how to experience moksha. You know, that's why we have ahimsa and brahmacharya and all of these aspects that are actually part of yoga and Jainism and Buddhism and Sanatana Dharma. You know.
Yeah, what I love about being in India is that, speaking of vairagya, it renunciates that sadhus are part of society. Like, not that they are identifying with society. It's inclusive. Like people who renunciate the social life, who chose to walk on the path of a sadhu, which is not possess anything. You consider yourself as being dead, basically, and they chose that path of living, and they want to merge with Shiva, basically. And those sadhus are, you see everywhere. That's what I really like about. Whereas in the Western world or just developed Asian countries, there are people who want to give their life away for the divine, right? But then either you want to become a nun or a priest or something. So that it's a very it's not quite included in the society. I don't know. Like it seems very.
It's its own thing.
That's its own thing. You live very separate life in a certain, like a center or institute or somewhere where everyone lives together in a small community, and not necessarily deeply integrated in being an everyday life. So as being a monk is the same, right? You decide to become a monk, and you go through the training and studying and the rigorous hours of meditation and whatnot, and you live in a monastery like forever, basically. And it's very separated life, whereas in India is integrated into the daily life. You get a bus ride from A to B on the side of the road, you see some sadhus and they walk on barefoot on the side of the road, and chaiwalas or people who sell the small snacks or something, they just offer food to those people, and there's so much ingrained in their everyday life. That's what I really love about, and they all have a huge respect for those people.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? If you see we've taken groups to India before, and we've had individuals, like for example in Tiruvannamalai, right? So you have Arunachala. There's a lot of sadhus who live around there because Arunachala is considered as a manifestation of Shiva, and so if you're a sadhu, then where else should you be? And then we've had Westerners say to us, they're all bums, what are they doing just hanging around? They don't understand the concept, see? And I like what Sadhguru said once. Sadhguru said that for example, when the British first came to India, they saw a lot of the Babas and the sadhus and that, just doing their thing, chilling, still in society, but they're not part of society, so to speak, you know what I mean? And people, the British said, they just have renounced the world, possessions and this and that. And okay, you can translate kind of vairagya as renunciation, but what Sadhguru's point is like they're not looking at it the right way. They're freed, they're liberated. They didn't renounce. They're liberated from the life that we are imprisoned by, possessions, status, and this and that. They've freed themselves from that. They didn't renounce this life because this life is nothing. They just liberated themselves from this, nonsense. So, and a lot of people just don't understand that tradition. They don't respect it because it looks like a bunch of homeless people hanging around. And look, to be fair, there are some bubbers who fake it, but to get free food and stuff like that. But that might have been again a family situation where they were disowned, and there's a lot of things. Homelessness in India is like homelessness anywhere else, where a lot of people get disowned because of maybe mental problems or just socio-economic problems and stuff like that. But in saying all of that tradition is like part and parcel of the culture. Like you walk on the street in Delhi, there's a Baba there. You walk on the street in Calcutta, there's a yogi just sitting on the corner. You're like, what the hell's he doing here? You know what I mean? Like,
again, like Westerners come to India and seeing those Babas on the side of the street and witnessing them as they're like homeless people or something. But again, that is like somewhat you could say that's not knowing, like a type kind of innocence, but also in a sense that you are judging people of land of India with your perspective of the West. So you need to be very cautious. You need to make an effort to understand who those people are, and you can tell straight away from what they wear or what they don't wear or how they look and all that. So make sure we not to judge people from our familiar perspective, which is a big mistake.
Everyone makes that mistake, right? No matter what. But especially with India, people are really quick to judge, as we know, and we've spoke about on this, and we don't want to make it too political. But one thing that I will say about that is one of those individuals we had that were criticizing the sadhus on Pradakshina Road in Tiruvannamalai, once we took them for a walk down Pradakshina Road and they looked into the eyes of one of the sadhus, completely transformed. Their opinion was completely transformed of, they said wow, they're so innocent and peaceful, and it's well, that's what happens when you are liberated from this, so, and you renounce this, so to speak, right? So never be quick to judge, as we should, we always try to point out on here, but that's the beauty of India and the beauty of the sadhu culture. In saying that, you and I have personally been transformed by India ourselves, right? We've been, from living there for a long time, visiting for a long time, it's had a very positive effect on our life. We wouldn't be doing any of this if it wasn't for India. Right?
Definitely.
So, and for yourself personally, as a 21-year-old, the first country you ever visited?
20.
India. So South Korea to India. It's you flip the script when you go from, if everyone who's listening and watching, if you've never been to either South Korea or India, you would understand what we're talking about here.
Pretty much same from Australia to India.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, same.
It's a flip of the script.
Yeah, again, my motivation at the age of 20, just finished 2 years of university, been majoring in politics.
Yeah.
Just at that age, anyone would have that sort of idea that you want to kind of save the world and help the others and, bring these dark truths out to the world and, this kind of idea.
Yeah, young idealism.
Very idealistic mind. So again, being a really grade A student and all that, I kind of felt a little bit of need a bit of a change, and to be able to do the work that I was thinking of doing, getting into human rights and things like that, is humanitarian work and kind of thing. So I thought that I needed some a real physical experience, because born and raised in South Korea, really nothing was lacking, abundance, and pretty much did everything what I wanted to do. And then as a child, grew up without much lack, and just an ordinary middle class family. So just wanted to experience something completely different. So that's what I thought was very necessary to do what I wanted to do at that time. And then around the same time, I had my good friend from high school. She also wanted to do something like that, and she was majoring in social welfare, and she was looking to go to Calcutta and doing some volunteer work over there. So I was looking for something like that, and she was going. So, I might as well join her. And that decision wasn't difficult at all. You want to come over to my place? Yeah. Oh yeah, why not? This sort of thing it was. So it was a very easy decision for me. And my parents agreed to give me just a little bit of pocket money each month to spend in India. And I myself saved money for the return airfare, and that return ticket was 1 year open or something like that. And I planned for 6 months to go there, and I had a 6-month visa for India, and my return flight was to go to Nepal and fly from Nepal to Thailand, and Thailand and back to Korea. It was that sort of journey schedule. Yeah, so how I got there, and then landed in Delhi. This is old airport, really chaotic.
Yeah, the old Delhi airport.
Yeah, very small. It was very late at night, stinky, lots of people. Again, like straight out of Korea. Never been to any other country. First time. So green and like
don't know anything.
I remember it was humid. It was a little bit hot. It wasn't very hot because it was at night. Yes. And there was a Korean lady there. We organized beforehand to pick us up, then got us to this guest house in Palaganj. And again, like actually it worked best for me, not having any preconceived idea how life like is supposed to be, like because in the morning coming out to the main bazaar and cows walking and
so good,
like just pure chaos, chaos and
it.
like hot and just people walking around like males walking around there just basically like pajamas. And that was so like completely new and different for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, like I didn't have much like an idea of how things should be. So maybe I guess it's pretty hot for these people. So that's how it is, and this and that, and and the first stop was again we planned to go to Calcutta, but the Varanasi is kind of in the halfway. So we decided to go to Varanasi after staying like 2 nights in Delhi. And and the story I always tell you about my first toilet experience in Delhi. The toilet without a hole.
It's a classic.
Yeah, I was a bit shocked, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah, of course. I've been there.
So all that type of thing, and I was also even then we went to Varanasi first, and then again I didn't have much knowledge on the river Ganga, but again like that was very impressive. The people bathing in the ghat and all that, and
burning ghat too.
Yeah, again the burning ghat. Again, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, like if that was even there, like, I had no idea really. Nothing. So again, my friend knew much more about India, and she wanted to stop there again. Like, okay, why not? And we got there and walked around the ghat, and then just keep walking. I was on my own, and like something is burning, and people doing this, burning. And this young boy approached to me and explaining what this place is about. And so that's the area where they burn the dead bodies. So I got there pretty close to the small area where they burn the bodies. And again, like I had not special ideas, but what's happening right in front of me physically wasn't anything like shocking.
No.
It wasn't anything like amazed or surprised. It was just like watching something is burning, but that's just a human body.
Well, I remember the times that we've been at the burning ghat together, and like I think people in the West have, people see like the burning bodies on television at the moment. and some people in the West can be shocked by that, but that's how things are in India. But it's like, actually, when you're at the burning gut, it's a very peaceful feeling. I mean, I remember the first time I was over there, and I saw the skin peel off someone's head, and then there's just skull, and like it's not like you're not really horrified. Like there's something about Varanasi, obviously, as well too.
Yeah, it's completely different from what most people think of. That's I mean, if you don't have that sort of experience, you can only imagine from what you're seeing from the pictures and the videos and things like that, right?
Of course. Yeah.
But again, there's such, like you mentioned, there's a really peaceful atmosphere, and again, all those people who work there are volunteers. They just get fed and nothing else really. They work there because they have a good heart, and they have tremendous respect to that people.
The tradition, as well.
And yes, and people who walk by know what they're doing and what the place is about. So that, again, I mean, you're not allowed to take pictures or videos and things like that, but we do see.
Yeah, of course, there's a lot of people doing that.
Yeah. But you're not actually allowed to do things like that because that's not respecting the.
Well, we didn't do it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, things like that, and like what was so horrific in that moment was this person who works there. You got to make sure the bodies get burned completely. So they just get, I think it was leg, and then just pull the leg so that bone but it was pretty much burnt.
Yeah.
But it like pull it out and then chop on the top. It's just like a sack of meat basically. And you can see them ready, like a steel part that's not been burnt and things like that. That was a little bit like, it was a bit surreal, like. Not super shocking, but was a bit surreal. And in that moment, I thought, like, that's it. Like, life is like there's not much in life, and not in a really sad way. It's more so like a liberating way. That like, so we don't have to hold on to things that we think it's important. One day I'm gonna be like that person.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
The burning.
We'll all be like that.
Yeah, exactly. So in that moment, it was like very like relieving. It was actually very liberating experience. And
you said it the other day. You said like the pinnacle of our life is that. Like that's the. That's the moment. Your whole life is going towards that moment. You know what I mean? Like it's not. And this is the thing about India. Like death is embraced, right? In India, it's a celebration. Death is a celebration of life. It's a and I know we sort of do that in the West too, right? Where we after the funeral, there's a wake, and we sit around and we talk about the good times we had with that individual. But it's really dark and gloomy and
like sad.
Really sad. It's still sad in India, right? But it's more of a celebration. Like when you're with the families and this and that, it's like, the Dharmic cultures are very celebratory, right? Like every day's a festival in India, as you know.
Oh, that's why that Varanasi crazy dance nights.
Oh yeah, my God, crazy! Like
people just
going mad,
fully giving everything on crazy dancing that they do. So that's right. I mean, I thought like when we were talking about death or things like that. And I thought it almost like everybody fears death, right? And while we're alive, when we think of passed away grandparents or something like that, like one day I'm gonna disappear as well. We know that, but for like since certain age, you kind of start thinking of death more seriously, and more so than now, we get more fearful of death. But again, as you mentioned, in India, it's very festive kind of atmosphere. When you walk through the very small alley in Varanasi, just getting to Burning Ghat and going out from Burning Gut, that little alleyway is full of shops. They're selling like flowers and different colorful powders and little statues and like a really what is it? So like colorful, the good quality garments and things like that. That is to be used for the funeral.
Exactly.
And so colorful. And I remember once we walked past and there was a female. She looked maybe early 40s, late 30s, early like death.
Yeah.
And she was lying peacefully, but beautifully been dressed and got beautifully makeup and everything, and people were singing, and it's obviously it's not entirely joyful moment, but they somewhat embrace death, someone else's death, as like a celebrating for reaching moksha, hopefully. So
well, if you die in Varanasi, you're one with Shiva.
Yes, exactly.
So.
That's very honorable, I think, ritual after death, I think.
Yeah.
So that's why I was just thinking that almost in Indian tradition, in Hindu tradition, it seems like you live for that moment.
Yeah.
And you know how to embrace that moment.
Yes.
And that is to get a real answer for how to live your life, you know.
Yeah.
Like that's again, that's the big thing that we can all learn from visiting Varanasi.
I remember we would be going to Burning Gut, and we would be in the alleyways, and you can always hear the kind of the cremation procession coming. Yeah, you know, the guys
singing and bells, really loud.
And you got to get out of the way because
they're
on a roll.
The army of people gonna come through. You're like.
And for those of you who've never been to Varanasi, the alleyways are very small. So in a massive city, so. But yeah, like we were saying, like you were saying, it's death is considered, you know, and this comes back to being a moksha tradition, right? Like, for example, you die in Varanasi, you one with Shiva. You die in Arunachala, you one with Shiva. You know what I mean? Like, there's all of these things that are part of the culture that people celebrate. Like, you reach moksha, why? Because you died in Varanasi, you know. And, you know, in saying that, I always think about the Italian Baba, Shiva Das, and I always think it's kind of sad because he lived his whole life in Varanasi, but then he left and he died in Italy, you know.
That's pretty heavy.
It's pretty heavy, you know what I mean? Like, and he was full Hindu and dedicated to the Dharma. And but anyway, that's a whole other side topic. But to go back to your journey, and I can elaborate a bit, like after that you kind of ended up in Calcutta, where it kind of transformed your life, right? Like you ended up working at Mother House with your friend. And I mean, for those who don't know, Calcutta is one of those places that will transform your life. It was the first place I went to, right?
Yeah. Again, like, the city itself is, again, big city, but like for tourism reason, not so much.
No. There's not much in West Bengal, right?
No.
I mean, like there's some great temples there.
Yeah.
But like in Calcutta in general, it's not, unless you go to Bellarmith or something like this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, not too much touristic place.
No.
But again, we both know that pretty amazing people, local people, that actually that gives a big impact on anyone's life who spend enough amount of time in Calcutta.
Yeah, the Bengali people are just something else, right? Really something else.
Really friendly. I don't know. They are just something different. They have something different about those people. Yeah. So I start working at Mother House and taking care of handicapped babies, and also worked at it's called Premden, where people who kind of like a bit like a hospital, like from like a late teenager to adult people, just stay there and get looked after, and then if anyone gets worse and they're about to go to
Yeah.
the Shiva world.
Yeah.
Then those people get moved to Kaligat. And so it obviously changed my life. And again, like I said, I'm gonna work in a humanitarian field and change the world and bring the truth out to the world.
The truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Human rights and all that. Again, the innocent motivation. But I think I forgot the most important thing, and maybe that's not my fault. It's just how a comfortable life does to you.
Yeah.
Like you thought that you have so much to give and share, but so that you you were there to look after those people, do all their laundries and cook the food, and so doing that sort of the housework kind of thing for people, so that you have so much that you come from richer country and you're gonna do something for them.
Yeah.
In the end, that was such an arrogance.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And that was a kind of a big realization that they gave me much more, which I didn't have.
Yeah.
So then that time changed my life. Yes. Yeah, every time, as you know, every time I talk about it.
Yeah. That's what I always say to people. I always say that you'll go over there with your idealistic plans to India, think you're going to change them, but they'll change you. The whole experience, and this is what we're talking about, that tradition, that living through those people, you know what I mean? Their undying belief in death, the idea of moksha and Brahman being part of all the one thing, and just it has the psychological impact it has on the people is humility, innocence. Okay, we can say that in some of the more affluent parts of India, you're going to see people behaving like they behave in the West who are affluent. Okay, that's what money does to people, right? But in general, most people in India are not affluent. There is a growing middle class, but they're not really, not like, say, in America, but the people are so, especially you go to rural India, or if we talk about Calcutta, you go to Calcutta and the people are really innocent and humble and curious, curious.
Yeah, Calcutta is a big city, but they're nothing like city people.
No.
They're so giving. They don't have much, but they're giving people.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
They're living on the side of the street. They don't have home, but they're giving people.
Yeah.
Again, Mother Teresa said that when she started establishing the mother house and picking up these sick or homeless people from the side of the street and train station and all that, and she established these centers to look after people. And what she said was that she saw Jesus Christ in every single person. But what I experienced for myself is that every single Indian people who I met in that place, they didn't have to have a certain belief in God. They didn't have to learn about, religion or anything. They already have it.
They have it, yeah. It's in their eyes. It's part of their culture.
It's just it's part of their culture. It's in their DNA. Yeah. They have so many volunteer workers going in and out every day, every week, every month, right? We are just kind of floating people who work there for a few months and then leave kind of thing. But they remember every single person.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
When you go back, they remember you. They
course.
remember your name or what you did to them. They know everything. And they have this unconditional love to those people who thought they're gonna help them out, but they learn some. These Westerners or Far Eastern Asians come there and want to do something for them, learn much more invaluable lesson from them, and didn't have to learn about Jesus Christ, for example.
No.
In Catholicism, in that tradition. So for them, again, they it's already learned. It's in their DNA. They see every single person as God, as Shiva, and that's why some people, as we know, like they work there for entire their life.
Yeah.
They just don't leave.
Never leave.
They don't leave. Whatever those individuals themselves think of their own life, I think it's not because of their, not just because of their will to work for them.
Yeah.
It's more because of so much love you get from them.
Yeah.
That's why. That's why you can't leave.
Yeah. You get hooked on it.
Yeah.
But there's that overwhelming warmth, right, that you get from the people there. It's a warmth that we often don't get in our homelands, right? And like you said, everyone remembers you, and it's really interesting the way that some of that plays out, right? Because we have lots of friends in India, but like if we see some of them like, hey, but then we have like friends at like our favorite tea shop in Tiruvannamalai, right? Two brothers have this tea shop, and we've become friends with them since we've been going there. And every time we go back, it's kind of interesting. Like, it's not like you hit off on a conversation. It's like, hey guy, hey Jason, still masala chai, no sugar?
No sugar.
And they remember.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, man, I haven't seen you for a few years, but roll it out. Like, the memory is impeccable. But that's that's gesture is that they care.
Yes.
They really care, you know what I mean? And I think that's what I think a lot of us learn. Like, that's such a small gesture, but it goes a long way with people, right? And in saying that, like, that compassion is part of their culture too, right? Like, to empathize with others, to embrace others as their own. We've seen that all throughout history, right? Like, even if we look at Islam tried to invade the country, but they absorbed Islam, and there's 200 million Muslims in India, and everyone's living there and doing their thing and fighting this situation together at the moment, and this has been like the thing about Sanatana Dharma especially is this idea of inclusiveness instead of exclusivity, right? And this is where a big difference between the Abrahamic faith and the Dharmic traditions are, where Christianity and Islam have a sense of exclusiveness, like, this is our gang and everyone else's, But Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, is an inclusive tradition. And it goes way back too. Like, if we look at the first traders, the Jewish traders back 562 BCE, when they were going to Koch in Kerala, and there's been a Jewish community there ever since, you know what I mean? And even hundreds of years later, when the Jews were exiled from Israel in 70 CE, when the destruction of the Second Temple, where did they go? They went to Kerala. A lot of them went to Kerala, and they've had a Jewish community there ever since. No problem, just come. We won't take care of you. It's like, like you're taking care of a neighbor or something like this. And we are neighbors, right? And that's kind of the inclusive mentality of the Hindu culture. And the Indian culture is this idea of everyone's our neighbor. Even when the Christians went there and they trying to convert all the Hindus and this and that, it's okay, you can stay and live in shanti, you know what I mean? Like, but, so you have this compassionate psychology.
Yes.
And we've felt it. Everyone who goes there and gets addicted to India feels it, and just never want to leave.
And more recently, about Tibetan people. right?
True, yeah.
Like they embraced the Tibetan people who became refugee and running away from Chinese invasion, and Dalai Lama, of course, lives up in Dharamsala.
100%.
Indian government instantly gave them the citizenship and a certain amount of financial support for them to, carry on their life in the land of India. And that's huge. It's a huge love and compassion. Yeah.
And what was ironic in that situation with Tibet is no other country wanted to touch it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But India especially knew that that they're the Tibetan brothers. You know what I mean? Like especially with the Buddhist culture and everything like that. But it doesn't really have to be related to, like, so as I mentioned with the Jewish people. But it was just a matter of doing what was right in that moment. Mao was going crazy and, butchering the monks and whatnot. And so someone had to stand up. India stood up. It says a lot about some other places, but we won't get into that. But that's the inclusive giving nature of India as well. Like, look at vaccines, right? It's a vaccine warehouse. They produce majority of the vaccines for the world, right? And the irony is and we don't want to get too political, but when they're in a situation like they are now, you see some countries acting self-interested and not providing any help. We won't mention any names. But in saying all that, they've always had this inclusive mentality of contributing to the world and like not trying to influence, just contribute as a neighbor would contribute. Like, you have corn, I have potatoes. We can contribute and help each other, right? And they've always had this mentality. It's part of their culture, man. That's just the Indian psychology, and that's what everyone feels when you go there. And sadly, this is the tradition that a lot of Western people and political leanings in the West are trying to shut down. They're trying to shut this or cancel this tradition because this tradition is just something different. And we live in a funny world at the moment where we don't like diversity. We really don't like diversity. People say they like diversity, but they don't really like diversity. No. Because when you mention the Hindus do their own thing and their government's informed by Hinduism, because Hinduism is a culture, that starts to conflict with Western people who have this idealistic sense of secularism and Western democracy, where India, being the biggest democracy in the world, population-wise, they do it their own way. And there's something about uniqueness that we should embrace, not fight because we don't understand it. If you don't understand it, pick up the Gita, pick up,
given a bit of effort to understand a bit more.
Don't just criticize. Don't just criticize. Yeah. And it's such a weak mentality that we see around the world now. We see it on television. We see it through political leanings, with woke ideology. It's a weak mentality of like, I don't understand it, so I'll just cancel it. And it's like, hold the phone here. Like, you just don't know. And you don't know what's best for them. They know what's best for them, not you. So stay out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Stay out of it.
Yeah, it's just so sad that nowadays whoever is loud will get the followers, pretty much.
I don't listen to loud people.
And to discard the content of what that person's talking about. If someone is loud, he or she must be right.
Yeah.
It's like this. And again, we know that it's coming from very low level of intelligence, and nobody should do that. We always should have an open heart and to understand purely where the other people coming from, what the other culture is coming from, how the background, and just to shift the perspective a little bit. And that requires certain amount of effort. But I think to me, that's common sense to understand others.
Definitely. Who made anyone outside of India, or who made Western secularism, democracy, the police of the world? I mean, you just have to get along, right? Yes. We just have to get along. And the Hindu Dharma has been there for thousands of years. It informs the people. It's their culture. And I think the difficult thing for people to think about is that it's not a religion. People can't quite understand that concept because of its color. But if you haven't been to India, you don't understand. Once you go to India and you see it's on every street corner, people having pujas on the side of the road and stuff like that, you're going, what the hell's going on here? It's like one big festival that's happening every day, all the time.
Every household, every household has their own little shrine.
Yeah.
They pray 3 times a day, lighten the candles and incense, and that's just part of their culture. It's not religion, and it's too sophisticated to call it, just to limit it as a religion, I think. It's a science.
Yeah, because it's talking about the nature of consciousness. It's not talking about praying to like a creator God.
Yeah.
There are gods, but they're representations of an ultimate reality. And, you know, there's different understandings obviously in India, but the thing with India being a pluralistic sort of culture is that you're free to follow whatever you want.
Yes.
You know, like you're free to follow Ganapati, you're free to follow Vishnu, Skanda, doesn't matter, Lakshmi, Kali, you're free to follow whoever you want. There's no, you know, that's why the pantheon of gods are there.
And they all understand, they're all gods, and they have all equal respect to other gods with just different name.
Yeah. They are representations of different psychological aspects, of different archetypes. And so whoever has that certain trait, they resonate with that, right? So, and we need to embrace India's uniqueness here. Like, you can't just come along and say, you know, that we're outlawing a certain mentality because government should be this and that. And it's like, well, it's different in the West because there became religion and state in the West. It's not like that in India because they're Hindu. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and yes, there are Muslims there, but in comparison to the size of the population, and again, like how long do Hindus have to be oppressed for? Yeah. Like, it's another conversation that people don't want to admit that they've been oppressed. They think Hindus are the oppressors, but they aren't.
No, they've been oppressed for thousands of years through Mughal Empire and British invasion.
Hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years, yes. So, yeah, they're not oppressor at all.
No. But they just get on with it.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about India. They just get on with it without complaining. And a lot of places can actually learn from that. It's not that they don't know that they're of their history, but they got to move along with life as it is. And it comes from that inclusive mentality again. Like, you know, this happened, but we have to, in some sense, accept it, but it doesn't mean we have to be a victim of it in the present moment. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So we can just move along and progress with how it is.
Yeah, it's something along the line with what you were saying. I think, again, the question was, why is India a spiritual heart of the world? I think one of the biggest reasons why is because of its own originality, which is the same as what you're saying, uniqueness. That originality is always been there and is still there, and I don't think it's gonna ever go away. And that's where a lot of power and strength come from, the culture and the real, like a strong Indian people, like suburban people, like urban people. Yeah. So that's another thing. Like nowadays, that people like criticize other cultures and whatever they think the best and whatever they believe it's right, puts up in the pedestal, and not considering if it is really right for yourself. And they easily get influenced by other cultures and things like that. But that is actually what's counter-effective for humanity. And people often feel inadequate, or just like Korea, for example, the traditional Korean culture is not there anymore. But if they kept it, could have been like India, for example. Its own history and philosophy and outlook in life and tradition and things like that. So in the end, that its own originality will contribute to the rest of the world.
Yeah, 100%.
Just like how nature works. Like sun is sun, moon is moon. Moon doesn't try to be sun, sun doesn't try to be moon, right? And it can't happen. And just them being...
They live harmoniously.
Yeah, exactly. They do their role, just being what they are, and nourishes all being on Earth. It's just like in the human ecosystem, I think it's the same. It's so important to keep the cultural, traditional, original state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that contributes to that's just how nature actually is. Nature doesn't have sort of one pattern that things follow. The diversity of patterns is what brings beauty. And we don't think about that when we talk about culture, right? Like, I'm pretty sure everyone in the modern world, well, I'm speaking just for myself here, but I'm pretty sure a lot of other people would prefer to go to a Korea that kept its culture so they could experience something different instead of going to Korea when it's just like America. That's what it's like, right? Like, I mean, let's not beat around the bush. Maybe a more high-tech version of Korea, of America.
Yeah.
But likewise with China, right? China went down the path of communism and Marxism and completely destroyed Taoism and Buddhism. And so you go to China now and China's China. I mean, it's just another capitalist country in, a covering of communism, but it's a capitalistic country. And Taoism and Buddhism have been just really thrown out the window. And so you don't really go there the culture there is like an artifact. And this is one of the big things about India. India's tradition is a living tradition, you see. So Neo-Confucianism in Korea, Taoism in China, these are artifacts. There's something you go, you look at, there's a temple that's dedicated to it. You see a few odd people following it, but really just a couple. It's not a living tradition. And this is where people don't understand on the outside, because the Sanatana Dharma is a living tradition that goes through the people. That's what you've experienced in Sutter Street in Calcutta. That's that living tradition that humbles the people. It's a psychological framework that, is a science that has benefited the people for thousands of years. And when you have a living tradition, what you ought not to do is try to kill that. But the way you kill it is when you have intellectual imperialism.
Right.
And that's what we're going through. That's what India is going through now.
That's what's happening in India.
Happening. Yeah. See, people think that, we're not imperialistic no more with India. No one's going over there and oppressing them. But what about the woke ideologists? What about the Marxists? It's intellectual imperialism because they don't understand Hinduism as a living tradition that lives through the people. You're telling those people not to be like that. You're telling them to follow your path because it makes sense to you, right?
I think the problem is that all that sort of a movement is happening because this new generation in India sees advantages of being very heavily capitalistic or being a Marxist or something like that. They see a different kind of value or advantages. They think it's beneficial for Indian people. But again, that's mainly materialistic and political.
Yeah.
But Indian people being original, following its own original traditional culture itself, that is good, immense amount of value that can't compete with capitalism and political power and whatnot. And if they, keeping their original culture and bringing their own, politics and finances and things like that, but within that, working out within that traditional culture will bring much more prosperous life and happy and peaceful life for Indian people across the nation.
Yeah,
I
of
think.
course. Yeah.
So again, like the young generation with the woke people always like to follow what seems to be cool, and all these things.
I don't know how it's cool, but anyway.
Yeah. Being like a Twitter troll and being all these kind of things, but
TikTok dancer.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So please don't.
Yeah.
Just stick to the traditional culture. That's where the real gold mine is. I think that's where the real power and strength reside. I think.
Well, that's the war that India is going through now is an intellectual battle. It's a battle of intellectual imperialism, and Hinduism still hasn't been freed from oppression. And this is the irony with woke ideology, right? They pretend to support oppressed people and cultures, but they don't. They only want to support what's trendy and what's relevant.
Yeah.
And Hinduism, because it's thousands-year-old tradition, not relevant to them, and because they don't understand. See, so it's not enough that the Dharmic people of India had to go through the invasion of Islam, the British, but now they have an intellectual invasion.
Yes.
And it's influencing the young people of India, sadly, where Indian people are seeing the values in Marxism, young Indian people are seeing some sort of value in Marxism and this and that, which there is no real value when you unpack it. And they see a value in being Western, like it's a foreign. You don't see Westerners going around embracing Sanatana Dharma. They might do privately, but apart from the Hare Krishnas probably. But you don't see people dressing a lot like Hindus and having pujas on the street. You don't see this in the West. You probably won't see this in the West, right? But which would probably be good for the West, mind you.
Yeah.
But I just think a lot of people over there young people are not thinking about it clearly enough, and are being too influenced. And this again comes down to intellectual imperialism, right? You make people feel a certain way, so they want to then join the opposition, so to speak.
Yes.
And the way that the Hindus have been treated for hundreds of years has kind of ingrained this real subtle form of, and scholars talk about this in India, of an inferiority complex.
Being a Hindu.
Yeah. And they're always apologetic for what's like overly apologetic for things. And
it's funny, isn't it? Like it's like that in any other country has a long history.
Yeah.
Like for example, in Korea, you're following Taoistic path.
Yeah.
Or just anything like Confucian path.
Buddhism or something.
Buddhism, I follow Buddhist path, which is really kind of original Eastern culture and tradition. Yeah. Then you get laughed at. And you get looked down at, which is really funny.
It's weird, huh? It's like an ingrained inferiority complex. It's almost like the Western traditions did a good job, right? Christianity went there, made people feel inferior and undermined their tradition. And then what do we have in Korea? People applaud Christianity and kind of they don't really know what Buddhism is. Don't even mention Taoism. That's beyond their mental faculties. So, and this is the importance, to get back to our point, of having a living tradition.
Yeah.
And why India is the spiritual heart of the world, because it's still a living tradition.
Yes.
And yes, there are other living traditions, but this is the longest enduring culture, civilization in the world. The longest. For a reason, right?
Yeah.
Because of this living tradition. And like you said, it's not religious, it's more scientific and more practical, and it's more about the nature of the mind. And that's why it survives. It's not about getting into a debate if there's a God or if there isn't a God, is there a heaven or if there isn't a heaven. Heaven is right here and now in the Hindu tradition. And if you miss it, you'll never experience moksha. And that's the understanding of the Hindu tradition.
Yes.
Of India and the gift of India. Not to mention all of the other gifts they've given, Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Sankhya, yoga, you name it.
Once if rest of humanity to embrace the traditional Indian culture as it is, then we'll all get benefit from it.
Exactly.
That's guaranteed.
Just leave them be. Leave them be. And at the moment, everyone, we should, all wish them the best in the current situation.
Yeah.
Wish everyone the best in this current situation. And, we'll all get through this together for sure.
Yep.
And, I like to be optimistic. And so a lot of people these days are not very optimistic about the current situation. But if you understand, especially if you understand the grander perspective of the Dharmic culture of India, we'll understand that this passes as well.
Yeah.
And then we will live on and...
Yeah, we will. I think we will all come back even stronger after this.
Yeah.
I have belief on that, yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
So guys, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.